No studio shaped the image of the American detective more than Warner Brothers. From smoky offices to rain-slicked streets, they defined the golden age of noir, creating 37 of the 100 most iconic sleuths in film history between 1941 and 1955. We'll explore how Warner crafted these complex characters, how their personal codes, visual style, and moral struggles still influence modern detective stories today. In The Maltese Falcon, the character of Sam Spade changed the way detectives were shown in movies. Before him, most detectives were either clean-cut heroes or clearly bad guys. But Spade was different. He followed his own rules, ones that didn't always line up with the law or with what people expected. When his partner is killed, Spade doesn't show much emotion. He seems cold and distant. But this reaction isn't because he doesn't care. It's because he lives by a personal code. He believes there are certain things you just have to do, no matter how you feel. That idea became a major part of the detective characters Warner Brothers would create over the next decade. The filmmakers used visuals to show this inner conflict. Half of Spade's face is often in shadow, like he's caught between right and wrong. These lighting choices weren't random. They helped show that he didn't fully belong to either side of the law. Director John Huston also made choices that kept Spade separate from the other characters. He's often shown standing alone, framed by doorways or windows. Even in a room full of people, he's a little apart. This helped viewers understand that Spade didn't really trust anyone and didn't fully fit in. Later in the film, he has a chance to walk away from his code for someone he cares about, but he chooses to stick to his principles instead, even though it costs him. This was something new in movies. It wasn't about love or loyalty to the police. It was about doing what he believed was right, even when it hurt. At the time, many people watching the film were dealing with problems in real life, like failing banks and broken systems. Spade's independence and refusal to be fooled by anyone struck a chord. He didn't count on others to do the right thing, he relied on himself. What made Spade stand out was how he balanced toughness with honesty. He didn't pretend the world was fair, but he didn't give in to it either. You could see that in the way he moved and looked at people, calm, serious, and always in control. In the final scene, he walks away alone. He doesn't get a happy ending or a big reward, but that's the point. Spade isn't a hero in the usual sense. He's something more complex. He's a man who does what he thinks is right, even when no one is watching and no one says thank you. Spade's independent code and emotional distance lives on in characters like True Detectives Russ Cole and Hieronymus Bosch, who also follows their own path through a dark and broken world. After Sam Spade, Warner Brothers introduced another kind of detective, Philip Marlowe. While Spade followed a strict personal code, Marlowe brought a different energy. He acted tough, but deep down he cared. He was more like a modern-day knight, protecting people even if he didn't always show it. Marlowe appeared in several Warner Brothers films, each with a slightly different style depending on the actor and director. Humphrey Bogart played him in The Big Sleep, giving Marlowe a mix of world weariness and hidden hope. Even surrounded by crime and corruption, Marlowe tried to do the right thing, especially for people who couldn't protect themselves. One version of Marlowe used a unique camera trick, filming the whole movie from his point of view. This first-person style helped the audience feel like they were inside his head, seeing things as he saw them. Another version relied on voiceover, with Marlowe explaining his thoughts directly to the audience. These techniques made his inner struggles more personal and real. Marlowe's sense of duty, especially to women in trouble, set him apart. He didn't just solve crimes, he tried to protect people from getting hurt, even when it meant putting himself at risk. His loyalty wasn't about money or rules. It came from his own beliefs about right and wrong. Visually, the filmmakers used rain, reflections, and shadows to show Marlowe's inner conflict. Sometimes, mirrors or window blinds would split his image on screen, reminding us that he was torn between idealism and reality. Even when he seemed cynical, those visual cues showed he hadn't given up on doing good. What made Marlowe different was the way he flipped the idea of a hero. On the outside, he looked rough and jaded, but underneath, he had strong values. In a world full of lies and crime, he still believed in protecting others, even if he had to hide that belief behind a hard shell. Marlowe's mix of charm and hidden morals can be seen in Knives Out Benoit Blanc, who acts quirky and relaxed, but is always working to uncover the truth and protect the innocent. Not every Warner Brothers detective was a classic hero like Spade or Marlowe. Some characters tested how far a detective could go before losing the audience's trust. These in-between figures were smart and observant, like detectives, but used those skills in unusual, sometimes criminal ways. Take Roy Earl from High Sierra. He wasn't solving crimes, he was committing them. But he planned robberies with the same sharp thinking detectives used. Even as a criminal, Roy showed compassion, especially toward people who were weak or hurting. He wasn't a good guy, but he wasn't heartless either. Then there was Raven in this Gun for Hire. He was a hitman, not a detective, but he had the same sharp instincts. He could read people, plan ahead, and stay one step ahead of danger. Warner Brothers made audiences uncomfortable by asking them to follow a killer the same way they'd follow a detective. His story made viewers think, what if those same skills were used for something darker? On the flip side, characters like Barton Keyes in Double Indemnity stayed on the side of the law. Keyes was an insurance investigator who always trusted his gut. He followed the rules and tried to do everything by the book. But his strong beliefs also made him miss warning signs from people close to him. His honesty was both his strength and his weakness. These characters were also shown in different visual styles depending on their moral stance. The more honest ones were filmed in clear, balanced lighting, while the more questionable figures were often shown in heavy shadows. This helped the audience feel who they could trust, even before a word was spoken. In The Enforcer, Bogart played a prosecutor who stayed completely within the system. The film used a clean, straightforward style, bright lighting, fewer shadows, and steady camera shots. This made the movie feel like a real-life drama than a typical noir, raising questions about whether it even belonged in the genre. These lesser-known characters helped stretch what audience would accept in a detective story. Warner Brothers proved that being a detective wasn't just a job, it was a way of thinking. And even the morally gray ones made us think about right, wrong, and everything in between. These characters paved the way for anti-heroes like Detective Loki in Prisoners or Lisbeth Salander in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Figures who solve problems with sharp minds, but don't always follow the rules. Warner Brothers didn't create deep characters, they showed their inner struggles through how the films looked. Light, shadow, camera angles, and set design all worked together to reflect a detective's moral journey. One of their most powerful tools was lighting, dark shadows, mixed with bright lights. A style called chiaroscuro weren't just used for mood, they helped show the character's inner battles. For example, when only half of a detective's face is lit, it suggests he's torn between doing what's right and what's easy. A common visual trick was the shadow of Venetian blinds across the character's face. These stripes looked like bars, trapping the detective in a tough situation or a moral dilemma. When these shadows appeared, it meant the character was stuck between two different choices. Even costumes had meaning. The classic trench coat and hat. They weren't just cool, they were like armor. They showed the detective protecting himself from a world full of lies and danger. When he took them off, it often meant he was letting his guard down or facing something personal. Camera angles also told a story. High angles made characters look weak or guilty. Low angles made them seem powerful or sure of their beliefs. Eye-level shots were saved for the moments of honesty, when a character had made up his mind about what's right. Mirrors and reflections added another layer. Sometimes a detective would see himself doubled in a mirror or window, showing that he was split inside, struggling with what kind of man he wanted to be. Even the places where scenes took place had meaning. A detective's office usually looked organized and controlled, a place where he could think clearly. But clubs, police stations, or city streets were chaotic and full of pressure, showing the messy world he had to deal with. All these visual choices helped viewers feel the emotional weight of each decision without needing to hear it in a dialogue. The lighting, camera, and sets work together to show the invisible, turning moral struggles into something we could see on screen. This kind of visual storytelling lives on in movies like Zodiac and Blade Runner 2049, where light, shadow, and reflections tell us as much about the characters as the dialogue does. The detectives created by Warner Brothers changed movies forever. They weren't perfect heroes, they were flawed, thoughtful, and guided by personal values in a broken world. That made them feel real and relatable, especially during times when people didn't trust the system. Even today, we see their influence. Shows like True Detective and movies like Knives Out follow in their footsteps, featuring characters who face moral gray areas and tough choices. Directors like David Fincher and the Coen brothers have said they were inspired by these classic films. What keeps these characters powerful is their message. When everything else fails, it's up to you to stick to your code. That idea still speaks to audiences now, just like it did nearly a century ago. Tell us in the comments, who is your favorite detective? Whether it's a noir detective, a modern-day detective, we want to know. Thanks for watching. Golden Noir, out.